Most people don't panic when a credit card is declined. You assume it's a mistake, a signal glitch, a temporary issue. You try again, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And when it doesn't, you hear the same 5 words. Please contact your bank. That moment feels small, almost insignificant. But what if it isn't? For decades, the same pattern has appeared just before major financial disruptions. It doesn't arrive as an announcement, not as a warning. It arrives as a series of quiet, almost reasonable inconveniences. Credit cards don't just stop working all at once. They don't fail everywhere. They hesitate. They start to decline in specific places, at specific times, for specific types of purchases. Gas stations, grocery stores, that online subscription you've had for years. Nothing dramatic enough to make the news, just enough to feel off. And that's the key, because when systems are about to be adjusted, they are rarely tested publicly. They are tested silently, on small groups, on edge cases, on moments that can be easily explained away. Fraud prevention, temporary verification, unusual activity. Words that sound protective, responsible. But patterns don't care about our explanations. What makes this so unsettling isn't the decline itself, it's the timing. Historically, these credit card issues tend to appear after other subtle shifts have already happened. First, cash access becomes inconsistent. Then, purchase limits quietly appear. And only after that, credit becomes selective. It's not removed, it's filtered. That distinction matters, because credit cards are not just payment tools. They are permission systems. They decide what you can buy, where you can buy, and when you can buy. And when those permissions begin to change, the behavior of the entire system changes with them. People adjust without even realizing it. You switch cards, you use cash instead, you delay a purchase, you avoid a certain store. And the system learns. It observes how people respond to restriction when there is no resistance. This isn't a theory, it's a behavioral pattern repeated across different countries, different decades, and different economic contexts. Not loudly, quietly. What's most interesting is that these moments rarely feel connected while they're happening. A declined card feels personal, embarrassing, your problem, not a systemic one. But when thousands or millions of people experience the same small issue within the same narrow window of time, it stops being random. It becomes data. And data is how systems evolve. Most people don't look for patterns during normal days. They only try to connect the dots after something breaks. But by then, the early signals are already gone, forgotten, dismissed, explained away. This is why the pattern doesn't rely on fear. It relies on normalcy. Because our normal behavior is the most reliable indicator of what we, as a population, will tolerate next. A declined card today doesn't mean collapse tomorrow. But historically, it has meant adjustment, calibration, a system quietly learning its limits, and yours. So the question isn't whether credit cards will decline. They always do. The question is, why now? Why here? And why does it keep happening right before larger shifts follow? That's the pattern. And once you see it, it becomes difficult to unsee.
You're at the checkout. You tap your card, a small, awkward pause, and then the message, declined. The real event isn't the error message. The real event is what you do next. That's the part most people miss. Do you try another card? Do you pull out cash? Do you just walk away and cancel the purchase? Each choice you make is a signal, and that signal is far more valuable to the system than your transaction ever was. Because modern financial systems aren't built to stop you cold. They're built to shape your behavior gradually. Small delays, soft refusals, approvals that feel conditional. Just enough friction to guide you, but never enough to make you truly alarmed. And you'll notice these things almost never happen in a vacuum. A card decline might start to cluster with other minor changes. Authorization times get just a little bit longer. You see more verification prompts. Maybe there's a sudden review on a category you always spend in, or a temporary freeze on your account that mysteriously resolves itself. In isolation, none of it feels dramatic, but together they create a feedback loop. The system adjusts its pressure, we adapt, and the system learns. This learning phase is everything because once a system understands how you respond to a small limitation, it can predict with unnerving accuracy how you'll respond to a much stronger one later on. The most important phase isn't restriction, it's observation. And historically, this phase always looks the same. We defend the system. We say, oh, it's just for security. It's fraud prevention. This is normal. And individually, most of the time, we're right. But systems don't operate on individuals. They operate on populations. And when enough of us accept a little inconvenience without pushing back, the system gains confidence. Confidence to normalize it. Confidence to expand it. And finally, confidence to make it permanent. This is why the patterns matter so much more than the explanations. Explanations change, the patterns repeat. In previous cycles, this exact kind of credit-based friction showed up right before major shifts. Spending controls, tightening of liquidity, policy changes that were always framed as being for our own protection. None of them were announced with a press release. They just emerged from a series of technical issues. And here's the part that's truly uncomfortable. By the time people realize something fundamental has changed, their behavior has already adjusted. They've stopped trying to make certain purchases. They've stopped relying on certain payment methods. They have adapted. And adaptation is the entire point. Not control, not force, adaptation. A system that doesn't need to enforce its rules out in the open is far more stable than one that does. So these signals that appear first, they aren't there to warn you. They're there to measure you. It's why these moments feel so strange when we look back on them. People say, something felt off back then, but at the time, it just felt normal, forgettable. That's how these patterns survive, completely unnoticed. They don't shock you, they just blend in. So the next time your card begins to hesitate, not fail outright, when an approval becomes conditional, not denied, when simple inconvenience replaces a hard interruption, it's worth asking not just what is happening, but what is the system learning from you? Because once that learning is complete, the adjustment phase begins, and by then, the pattern no longer needs to hide.